The cardboard box was still flat beneath the conference table when Vivian Blackwood leaned back in her leather chair and smiled at Ethan Mercer like she already owned his answer. "You won't quit," she said loud enough for every executive to hear. "Not with a daughter to feed rent overdue and health insurance you can't afford to lose." The room went silent, waiting for the single father to swallow his pride. Instead, Ethan reached under the table, pulled out the empty box, and began folding the flaps. Vivian's smile vanished. What kind of man starts packing when he has everything to lose? 3 hours before Vivian Blackwood dared him to quit, Ethan Mercer sat inside his old blue pickup on the lowest level of a Boston parking garage, eating a peanut butter sandwich over a paper napkin so he would not drop crumbs on his work shirt. The rain outside had followed him from his apartment in Dorchester all the way to Blackwood Harbor Tower, turning the streets glossy and gray, making the brake lights smear red across the windshield. He had parked on level P5 because employees from facilities were not allowed to use the dry spaces near the elevators. Those were reserved for board members, clients, senior partners, and people whose names appeared on polished office doors. Ethan's name appeared on a plastic badge clipped to his belt, scratched at the edges from 6 years of daily use. He was 39, broad-shouldered, practical, and almost always tired in a way that sleep alone could not fix. His official title was Facilities Operations Supervisor, which sounded more important than the reality. Most days, he chased problems nobody noticed until they failed. Broken card readers, leaking pipes, jammed, loading docks, frozen rooftop units, flickering lights, flooded restrooms, stalled elevators, and executives who believed a thermostat should obey personal preference instead of physics. He kept Blackwood Harbor Tower alive from below, while the people above him negotiated deals worth more than he could imagine. His life outside the tower ran on the same kind of maintenance. Every morning began at 5:40. Ethan made coffee strong enough to keep him upright, packed lunch for his daughter, checked whether her homework folder was in her backpack, and reminded her to brush the teeth in the back because Molly Mercer had developed the suspicious habit of brushing only the ones visible when she smiled. Molly was 10, sharp-eyed, tender-hearted, and brave in the way children become when they have already learned that adults can disappear from life without warning. Her mother, Claire, had died 3 years earlier from a heart condition that moved faster than anyone expected. She left behind hospital bills, a closet Ethan could not open for months, and a daughter who still sometimes asked questions at bedtime because darkness made old grief feel close. Ethan never liked when people called him strong. Strong sounded clean. His life was not clean. It was rent due on Friday, a truck transmission slipping between 2nd and 3rd, a dentist recommending braces Ethan could not yet afford, and a landlord who had just raised the rent by $220. It was standing in a grocery aisle comparing 2 jars of pasta sauce because one cost 60 cents less, then putting back the Parmesan because 60 cents had already become a decision. It was not tragedy. It was math. That was why Vivian Blackwood believed she understood him. At 44, Vivian was the founder and majority owner of Blackwood Harbor Group, a commercial property and logistics company that had spread from Boston's old waterfront into 8 states. She was not flashy in the easy ways. She did not cover herself in diamonds or arrive in bright cars. She wore tailored dark suits, drove a slate gray sedan, and entered rooms as if time itself owed her efficiency. Her reputation came from discipline. Vivian could sit through an hour-long presentation, say almost nothing, and remember exactly who dodged a question, who inflated a number, and who tried to hide weakness behind confidence. She had not inherited her empire. She had built it from a freight coordination office above a shuttered seafood market back when she slept under her desk and negotiated payment extensions with a smile she did not feel. She knew debt. She knew exhaustion. She knew the humiliation of needing someone else to say yes. But success had hardened that memory, instead of softening it. Somewhere between the first million and the first billion, Vivian stopped believing people when they said dignity mattered more than money. She thought everyone had a number. The only difference was how much pressure it took to reveal it. Ethan had never met Vivian directly before that morning, though he had seen her pass through the lobby twice. Once she walked beside a senator and never looked toward the security desk. Another time she crossed the marble floor while Ethan was kneeling near an access panel with a flashlight between his teeth, trying to restore power to a row of elevators before lunch traffic. She stepped around the orange cones without slowing down. He did not resent her for that. People like Vivian did not see people like him unless something broke. That morning, something had broken above his pay grade. At 8:15, Ethan was in the service corridor behind the loading dock reviewing overnight reports with Diane Brooks, his dispatch coordinator, when his phone buzzed with an email marked urgent. Diane was 52 blunt kind when nobody was watching and capable of making 3 contractors, 2 guards, and 1 panicked tenant obey a schedule just by lowering her voice. She read Ethan's face before he said anything. "Bad?" she asked. Ethan scrolled once, then again. "Executive floor wants me upstairs at 9:20. Diane's eyebrows lifted. "That's never because they found extra money." Ethan gave a dry half smile, but his stomach tightened. The message said a safety compliance audit had flagged missing inspection signatures, delayed repair logs, incomplete vendor records, and unresolved maintenance documentation across multiple Blackwood properties, including Blackwood Harbor Tower. Ethan knew those words. He had written warnings about most of them for months. He had sent emails, attached work orders, requested staffing approvals, questioned vendor changes, and documented overtime strain until his blue folder looked like evidence for a trial nobody wanted to hold. 2 maintenance positions had been frozen since spring because Grant Huxley, the regional operations director, wanted to reduce costs before quarterly review. Grant was the kind of manager who treated spreadsheet savings like proof of genius. He wore expensive glasses he did not seem to need, spoke in corporate phrases, and had once written Ethan up for authorizing emergency overtime without waiting for approval, even though the emergency had been a burst pipe above a tenant's server room. Grant believed the facilities team existed to absorb problems quietly, cheaply, and without embarrassing anyone in a suit. Ethan had warned him that the staffing shortage was becoming unsafe. Grant replied with phrases like operational discipline and budget alignment. The audit proved what Ethan had feared. When people were stretched too thin, records slipped, inspections ran late, and risks multiplied in places executives never visited. At 9:12, Ethan washed his hands in a maintenance sink, changed into a clean work shirt he kept in his locker, and tucked the worn blue folder under his arm. Before heading upstairs, he checked his phone. There was a message from Molly's school reminding parents about the upcoming science fair. Molly had chosen to build a model of a lighthouse because Claire used to tell her that lighthouses did not stop storms, they only helped people survive them. Ethan stared at the message longer than necessary, then locked the screen and stepped into the freight elevator. The executive floor felt like another climate. The carpet swallowed footsteps. The air smelled faintly of polished wood, coffee, and money. Glass walls framed Boston Harbor under a low gray sky. Ethan passed an assistant's desk, then entered a conference room where 5 people already sat waiting. Vivian Blackwood occupied the head of the table. Grant Huxley sat to her right with a tablet open, his expression arranged into professional concern. Beside him were the finance chief, the legal counsel, a senior property director, and a woman from risk management, Ethan recognized only from email threads. On the side table near the wall, several flat cardboard archive boxes had been left behind from some earlier records move. Ethan noticed them because people like him noticed what other people forgot to clean up. Vivian looked at him without greeting, warmth or cruelty, only assessment. "Mr. Mercer," she said. "Sit down." Ethan placed the blue folder on his lap and waited. Grant began with a polished summary. The audit had uncovered gaps in required documentation. Those gaps could delay a refinancing package tied to 3 major properties. The company could face higher insurance scrutiny. Tenants could ask questions. Investors might become concerned. Grant spoke for 6 minutes before he named Ethan's department as the failure point. He said the facility's operation had not followed procedure, had not kept records current, and had not shown the level of discipline expected from a Blackwood property. Ethan listened without interrupting. He had learned a long time ago that interrupting people with higher salaries rarely made them hear better. When Grant finished, Vivian turned her attention to him. "Do you dispute that records were incomplete?" she asked. "No," Ethan said. Grant's mouth curved slightly as if the case had already closed. Ethan placed the blue folder on the table. "But the records are incomplete for reasons I documented before today." Vivian's gaze dropped to the folder. "Explain." Ethan opened it. He did not raise his voice. He showed the first email requesting authorization to fill 2 vacant maintenance positions, then the second, then the third. He showed a weekend schedule where one technician had covered 3 properties. He showed a work order for a failing pressure valve that had been delayed because the cheaper vendor could not come for 11 days. He showed the note where he objected to replacing a certified fire door contractor with a lower-cost company Grant preferred. He showed logs indicating Walter Nash, a 62-year-old electrician with bad knees and perfect attendance, had worked 13 days in a row because there was no one else available. The room grew quieter with each page. Grant shifted once, then leaned forward. "These materials don't excuse missing compliance signatures." "No," Ethan said. "They explain how we got there." Grant's cheeks tightened. "You were the supervisor." "I am the supervisor," Ethan replied. "That's why my name is on the late signatures. That's also why my name is on the warnings." Vivian took several pages and read them herself. Ethan watched her face, but Vivian had built a career out of not giving people what they wanted from her expression. "Why didn't you escalate this beyond Mr. Huxley?" she asked. Ethan looked around the table before answering. "Because people at my level don't simply email billionaire owners when a regional director ignores them." The legal counsel looked down. The finance chief stopped tapping his pen. Grant gave a short laugh with no humor in it. "That's a convenient story." Ethan turned toward him. "It's a chain of command. You taught us to respect it when it protected you." The sentence landed harder than Ethan intended. Vivian's eyes sharpened. Something in the room shifted from investigation to challenge. Ethan felt it and wished for Molly's sake that he had phrased it differently. Vivian closed the folder. "Every employee believes his pressure is unique," she said. "Every department says it needs more people. Every manager says the budget is too tight. The company pays you well, provides health insurance, and has kept your team employed through difficult markets. If conditions are truly as impossible as you claim, Mr. Mercer, you are free to leave." Ethan felt the first flash of heat in his chest. He did not move. Grant folded his hands on the table, clearly enjoying the turn. Vivian continued, her voice controlled, almost casual. "But you won't." The room went still. Ethan looked at her. Vivian leaned back slightly. "You have a daughter, don't you, Rent? Medical expenses, insurance you can't replace overnight, a salary you need. Men in your position do not walk away from jobs like this because their pride gets bruised." Ethan heard Molly's voice in his memory, asking if the light bill was expensive because he had turned off the kitchen lamp while helping her with homework. He heard Claire telling him years ago that dignity was not something they could buy later when life got easier. His hands remained flat on the table. He was afraid. That was the truth. He was thinking about rent, braces, groceries, the truck, the school science fair, and the thin savings account he checked every night like it might grow from being watched. Vivian was not wrong that he needed the job. That was what made the insult so sharp. She had looked directly at his fear and mistaken it for ownership. Ethan's gaze dropped to the floor near the side table where the flat archive boxes waited in a neat stack. For one long second, he did nothing. Then he stood. Grant's smile widened. "Mr. Mercer, don't be dramatic." Ethan did not look at him. He stepped to the side table, picked up one of the flattened cardboard boxes, and brought it back to the conference table. Vivian's expression changed for the first time, not much, but enough. Ethan pressed one crease, then another. The cardboard made a dry, snapping sound as the bottom began to take shape. The finance chief stared at the table. The woman from risk management parted her lips but said nothing. Vivian watched Ethan's hands fold the flaps into place. "What are you doing?" she asked. Ethan finished the last tab, lifted the empty box, and met her eyes. Packing. He turned and walked out before his fear could catch up with him. The executive floor remained silent behind him, but Ethan felt nothing victorious as he rode the elevator down. His reflection in the metal doors looked pale and older than it had that morning. By the time the elevator opened on the operations floor, his stomach felt hollow. Diane looked up from her desk and saw the box first. "Ethan," she said carefully. "What happened?" He placed the box on his desk. "I quit." The words sounded unreal outside the conference room. Around him, the ordinary noises of the department seemed to fade. Radios crackling phones, ringing the copier, warming someone laughing in the corridor before realizing the room had gone quiet. Ethan opened his drawer. His belongings looked embarrassingly small. A stainless steel coffee mug. 2 screwdrivers he had brought from home because the company ones disappeared too often. A framed photo of Molly missing her front tooth. A crooked clay turtle she had made in art class and insisted he keep at work so he would have a brave animal nearby. 3 protein bars. A phone charger wrapped with electrical tape. Diane stood beside the desk, stunned. "You can't just quit." Ethan almost laughed because the same sentence had probably formed upstairs in Vivian's mind. "Apparently, I can." "What about Molly?" Diane asked, then regretted it immediately. Ethan's hand froze on the photo frame. "That's why I'm doing it." Diane's eyes softened, but she did not understand yet. Maybe Ethan did not fully understand either. He only knew that if he stayed after Vivian used his daughter as proof of his obedience, something in him would bend in a way Molly might one day recognize. Walter Nash came from the equipment room, wiping his hands on a rag. "Boss." Ethan looked at the older man's tired face, at the gray in his beard, at the limp. Walter tried to hide after long shifts. "Take care of your knees," Ethan said. Walter's jaw worked, but no words came. Upstairs, Vivian Blackwood still sat at the conference table with Ethan's blue folder in front of her. Grant was speaking again, saying the company should document the resignation as voluntary, saying emotional employees created liability, saying Ethan had exposed his own temperament. Vivian barely heard him. Her eyes had returned to the first page of Ethan's folder. This time she did not skim. She read the dates, the ignored requests, the warnings marked low priority, the staffing charts, the delayed approvals. Then she turned to a report showing Grant's quarterly performance bonus for reducing operating costs across the Boston region. The number was large. The room felt suddenly colder. Vivian had approved that incentive structure herself. She had rewarded men like Grant for making buildings cheaper to operate, then acted surprised when they made people pay the hidden cost. Grant was still talking when Vivian raised one hand. He stopped immediately. "Pull every staffing record for the last 12 months, she told the finance chief. "And every vendor change Mr. Huxley approved." Grant's face drained of confidence. Vivian looked toward the closed conference room door Ethan had walked through. For the first time that morning, she wondered whether the man she had tried to corner had just shown her the one thing money could not buy back quickly the moment before someone decides they have been humiliated enough. On the operations floor, Ethan Mercer stood over the cardboard box as if it might accuse him before anyone else could. The department had gone unnaturally quiet. Radios still crackled, a printer still clicked, and rain tapped the narrow windows. But everyone understood that something irreversible had happened upstairs. Diane Brooks stood beside his desk, her face pale with anger. Ethan reached for the framed photograph of Molly and felt his fingers tremble with shame and fear he barely contained. Ethan placed it carefully inside the box, then added the crooked clay turtle Molly had made in art class, the one she said would protect him because turtles carried their homes wherever they went. Diane swallowed hard. "You know what they'll say, right?" Ethan kept packing. I know. They'll say you were unstable. They'll say you walked out because you couldn't handle accountability. Ethan unplugged his desk lamp. Maybe. That doesn't bother you? He looked at her. Everything about this bothers me. That was the truth. He was not leaving because he felt fearless. He was leaving because Vivian Blackwood had looked at the parts of his life he worked hardest to protect and used them as proof that he could be controlled. He thought of Molly's lunch account, the rent notice, the dentist's estimate, and the truck that shuddered every time it climbed a hill. But needing something did not mean another person owned the right to humiliate him for needing it. Walter stepped forward. "Boss let us talk to her." Ethan gave him a tired look. She meant it exactly the way it sounded. Walter looked down. Everyone knew. Ethan cleared his drawer, signed out of the maintenance portal, and wrote a short resignation email before shutting down his computer. There was no music, no heroic feeling, only a hollow drop inside his stomach and the knowledge that by dinner Molly would ask why the box was in their kitchen. Upstairs, Vivian remained in the conference room long after Ethan left. Grant Huxley was still performing damage control, but the performance had lost its polish. He talked about documentation chain of command, voluntary resignation, and setting expectations. Vivian heard words, not meaning. The blue folder sat open in front of her. Ethan had warned Grant that 2 open technician roles were creating unsafe coverage gaps, that the fire door contractor should not be replaced, that Walter Nash had worked 13 consecutive days, and that a pressure valve repair could not wait for the next budget cycle. Grant had minimized every warning, then approved new marble paneling for the lobby because a prospective tenant wanted the entrance to feel premium. Vivian turned another page and found Ethan's note attached to the vendor change. Lower price is not lower risk. She read the sentence twice. Grant leaned forward. Vivian. Mercer has always been difficult when asked to operate within financial discipline. Vivian did not look up. Did he warn you about the staffing shortage? Grant paused. He raised concerns, but facilities always wants more people. Did he warn you about the vendor? He had an opinion. Did he warn you that the inspection schedule was becoming unsustainable? Grant's jaw tightened. He dramatized normal pressure. Vivian finally looked at him. And you summarized those warnings to my office as routine complaints. Grant's confidence flickered. Because that is what they were. Vivian closed the folder slowly. No. That is what you needed them to be. By late afternoon, Ethan carried the box through the parking garage with his badge in one pocket and a visitor exit slip in the other. Diane had hugged him near the service elevator. Walter had shaken his hand with both of his gripping too long. No one applauded. No one made a speech. Ethan was grateful. He set the box on the passenger seat of his pickup and buckled the seatbelt around it because the bottom felt weak. Then he sat behind the wheel and did not start the engine. His phone buzzed with a message from Molly Science Fair board needs glue sticks. On the way home, his older sister Rebecca listened to the story and warned him that Molly still needed stability. That evening, Molly found the box before he could decide how to explain it. It sat beside the kitchen table in their small apartment, smelling faintly of cardboard and office dust. Molly stood over it in her socks holding a cereal bowl. "Why is your turtle home?" she asked. Ethan sat across from her and told the truth carefully, the way parents tell painful truths after removing the sharpest edges. He said work had become unhealthy. He said people were being blamed for problems they had tried to fix. He said someone powerful had spoken to him in a way that made him realize staying would cost something he could not see on a paycheck. Molly listened. Spoon paused in the cereal. "Did she fire you? No. Then why did you leave?" Ethan looked at Claire's old mug drying beside the sink. Because sometimes adults wait too long to admit a place is hurting them. Molly thought about that. Then her eyes moved toward the rent notice on the fridge. Are we going to lose the apartment? There it was. The question he had feared more than anything Vivian could say. Ethan wanted to promise. Instead, he reached across the table and took her small hand. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that doesn't happen." Molly nodded, but she understood the difference between a promise and a hope. The next 3 weeks tested Ethan's decision. He applied for 14 jobs and rewrote his resume 5 times. One firm interviewed him over video, praised his experience, then asked why he had left Blackwood Harbor Group without another position lined up. Ethan chose honesty and watched the interviewer's face become careful. Another company offered a salary so low he would have needed a second job just to keep the apartment. He accepted temporary repair jobs instead. He fixed stage lights at a community theater, patched pipes beneath a church basement, replaced a bakery's refrigerator fan after midnight, and changed filters in a medical office before sunrise. The work paid cash, but never enough. Molly tried to help in small ways that made him feel worse. She stopped asking for school snacks. Meanwhile, Vivian's investigation widened. Grant fought like a man cornered. He produced emails stripped of context, claimed Ethan had a personal grudge, and hinted that frontline workers exaggerated hardship to avoid standards. But finance records told a cleaner story. He had delayed hires while reporting improved efficiency. He had replaced qualified vendors with cheaper firms. He had edited risk summaries before they reached Vivian's office. Worse, the bonus structure rewarded exactly that behavior. Vivian had designed it to push managers toward lean operations, clean margins, and lower overhead. She had told herself efficiency created strength. Now she saw the shadow beneath it. Every saved dollar had been taken from someone's sleep safety or silence. She dismissed Grant after the internal review confirmed he had concealed staffing risks and altered reporting summaries. Firing him should have felt satisfying. It did not. Removing Grant was easy. Admitting that Grant had flourished inside rules she approved was harder. So she began meeting with facilities workers, security staff, dispatchers, night cleaners, and technicians without directors present. At first, people spoke carefully. Vivian told them no one would be punished for honesty, then waded through the silence that proved promises from powerful people were not automatically trusted. Diane was the first to stop being polite. She told Vivian that urgent requests disappeared in management layers. Walter said technicians were afraid to report fatigue because they would be labeled unreliable. A night cleaner named Paula Reed said she had seen water leaking near an electrical closet 2 weeks before it appeared in any report because no one knew whether speaking up would cost a contractor their account. Vivian listened, and each conversation stripped away another excuse. She became angry then, defensive, then ashamed. The shame lasted longest. 6 weeks after Ethan walked out, his truck failed on a rainy Thursday while Molly was in the passenger seat holding her science fair ribbon. The engine coughed, lurched, and died under an overpass. Horns screamed behind them. Ethan guided the truck onto the shoulder while rain hammered the roof. Molly looked at him, trying not to look scared. "It's okay," he said. The words felt thin. The tow bill took half of what remained in checking. The mechanic said transmission. Ethan already knew. That night after Molly fell asleep, he opened his laptop and saw another rejection email. The company thanked him for his interest, but had chosen a candidate whose background better matched their culture. Ethan knew what that meant. Grant's name still had reach. He closed the laptop and sat in the dark kitchen staring at the box in the corner. For the first time, he wondered if Vivian had been right in the cruelest possible way. Maybe a man with a child depending on him did not have the luxury of pride. Maybe he had confused dignity with stubbornness. Maybe Molly would pay for a lesson only he needed. His phone rang at 9:18. The screen showed an unknown number, but the Boston area code made his pulse shift. He almost let it go. Then he answered. Vivian Blackwood did not begin with charm. "Mr. Mercer, this is Vivian Blackwood." Ethan looked toward Molly's closed bedroom door. "I know." There was a pause. "I'm not calling to offer your old job back." He said nothing. "I'm creating an independent safety and workforce integrity unit. It will report outside regional operations and have authority to halt unsafe work when staffing, vendor quality, or maintenance conditions create risk. I want you to help design it." Ethan let the words settle. The old version of himself wanted to grab the offer before it disappeared. But another part remembered the conference room and the way every executive had watched to see whether he would accept humiliation as the price of survival. "What's the salary?" he asked. Vivian gave him a number. It was better than before, but not magical. "Who protects the technicians when they report problems?" he asked. "The unit would." "That's not an answer." "Who protects them from retaliation by managers who still control schedules, reviews, overtime?" And references. Vivian was quiet. "That would need to be written into the structure," she said finally. "Yes," Ethan replied. "It would. I expected you to ask about compensation first." "I did. Now I'm asking about the thing that decides whether this is real." Vivian exhaled slowly. "What would you need?" Ethan looked at the cardboard box. It no longer seemed like proof of courage. It seemed like a receipt for fear. Written authority, anti-retaliation protections, direct access to your office on safety disputes, required response timelines, staffing risk included in executive reviews, and a public acknowledgement to the operations teams that the company failed them. Those conditions would cost her more than money. They would cost control, pride, and the clean story executives like to tell about isolated bad managers. Ethan understood that. "If you want me back because you feel guilty," he said, "find someone else. If you want me back because you're ready to change what made that meeting possible, put it in writing." Across the line, Vivian was silent for so long Ethan thought the call had dropped. Then she said, "I'll send a draft tomorrow." Ethan ended the call and sat very still. Molly's bedroom door opened a crack. "Dad," she whispered, "is everything okay?" Ethan looked at his daughter and for once did not pretend certainty. "I don't know yet," he said, "but maybe something is starting." Ethan did not sleep after Vivian's call. He sat at the kitchen table with his laptop open, a legal pad beside him, and the old cardboard box in the corner like a witness. Molly had gone back to bed, but he could hear her turn once, then settle again. Every instinct told him to accept before Vivian changed her mind. The truck was dead. His savings were nearly gone. The dentist had already called twice about Molly's follow-up appointment, but the longer Ethan stared at the notes he had written during the call, the clearer one truth became: if he returned out of panic, Vivian would still be right in the way that mattered most. Need would still be the leash. He had to return as a man, not as a rescued employee, and the difference mattered because Molly would one day remember how he handled fear. That thought steadied him more than the offer itself ever could, and he knew it. The next morning, Vivian sent a formal draft. Ethan read it twice, then drove Rebecca's borrowed sedan to his sister's house with the printed pages in a folder. Rebecca Mercer lived in Quincy with 2 teenage sons, a mortgage, and a talent for loving people without making their choices easier. "This is better than your old job." "That's what worries me," Ethan said. "A good offer can still be a bad trap." Rebecca looked at him over the paper. "And no offer can still get you evicted." He nodded, because she was right. Ethan explained his conditions: written anti-retaliation rules, direct access to Vivian's office on safety disputes, authority to stop unsafe work, response deadlines, staffing risk included in executive evaluations, and a public acknowledgement that the company had failed the operations teams. Rebecca listened without interrupting. When he finished, she said, "Then make the offer prove it respects you before it rescues you." That sentence stayed with him. By afternoon, Ethan called Diane and Walter separately. He did not ask whether he should return. He asked what would need to change for people like them to speak honestly without fear. Diane answered immediately. No manager should control the complaint and the punishment. Walter's voice was rougher. If a man says he's too tired to take another shift, it shouldn't go in his review like he's lazy. Ethan wrote everything down. He called 2 former contractors, then a retired safety inspector he knew. By evening, he had turned Vivian's draft into a document with red notes across nearly every page. At Blackwood Harbor Tower, Vivian faced her own resistance. The boardroom that had once gone silent while Ethan folded a box now filled with objections from people who had no interest in letting that box change company policy. The general counsel warned that a public acknowledgement could create liability. The finance chief said giving one department authority to halt operations might scare investors. A board member named Malcolm Pierce called Ethan's conditions emotional. Vivian let them speak. She would have trimmed the language, softened the admission, preserved executive control, and packaged the reform as leadership evolution. Now she heard something different beneath their arguments. They were not only protecting the company, they were protecting the comfort of never being corrected by the people who carried keys, tools, radios, and back pain. "This is not about rewarding an employee for walking out," Malcolm said. Vivian looked at him. "No. It is about asking why a good employee believed walking out was the only way to be heard." No one answered. Vivian signed off on negotiations that afternoon, but signing was not surrendering. She and Ethan spent 4 days revising the agreement. Their calls were tense. She pushed back on budget language. He pushed back on vague promises. She wanted discretion in public wording. He wanted the operations team to hear the word failed, not faced challenges. Once Vivian said, "You are asking me to admit more than most CEOs would." Ethan replied, "I'm asking you to admit enough that the people downstairs know you aren't blaming them anymore." It was the sound of Vivian deciding whether accountability still counted if it bruised her image. On the 5th day, the final document arrived. Ethan read it at the kitchen table while Molly built a cardboard lighthouse for her science fair display. The agreement gave the new Safety and Workforce Integrity Unit independence from regional operations. It created anonymous reporting channels, mandatory response timelines, direct escalation to Vivian's office protection from retaliation, and authority to halt work when staffing or vendor quality created danger. It also required a company-wide meeting with the Boston operations team. Ethan reached the last page and saw Vivian's signature already there. Molly looked up from her glue stick. "Is that good?" Ethan smiled faintly. "It might be. Are you going back?" He looked at his daughter, at the glue on her fingers, at the careful lighthouse standing crooked on the table. "I think so." Molly tilted her head. "So you won." Ethan thought about the truck, the sleepless nights, the humiliation and the fear that had followed him home from the garage. "Not exactly," he said. "I'm going back because this time I'm not going back scared." 2 weeks later, Ethan returned to Blackwood Harbor Tower wearing a clean work shirt and carrying the same tool bag he had owned for years. He did not bring the cardboard box. It stayed in the apartment folded shut but not thrown away. The lobby looked unchanged: marble floor, polished security desk, rain-streaked glass executives crossing quickly with coffee and phones. But to Ethan, every step felt different because he knew he could turn around if the agreement proved false. Diane saw him first near the service elevator. Her face hardened for half a second, as if she was afraid to hope, then broke open. She hugged him with one arm and slapped his shoulder with the other. "If this is another executive trick, I'm quitting next." Walter shook Ethan's hand and said, "Took you long enough." Ethan laughed for the first time in weeks. Vivian held the operations meeting at 10. She did not send a memo. She stood in the maintenance training room, not upstairs, with technicians, dispatchers, cleaners, security supervisors, and contractors crowded around folding chairs. Vivian stood without a podium. Ethan watched from the side wall. Her voice was steady, but not polished. This company failed to listen to the people closest to the risk, she said. The room went very still. Mr. Huxley concealed information, but the system allowed him to do that. I approved incentives that rewarded cost-cutting without measuring what those cuts did to workload safety and honesty. When concerns reached management, they were treated as complaints instead of warnings. That was wrong. Vivian continued. No employee should have to choose between telling the truth and keeping a job. No supervisor should need to resign before this company reads his warnings carefully. That changes today. It was not a perfect speech. It did not erase what had happened. But it was the first time many of them had heard a person at the top speak without hiding behind phrases. Ethan felt no triumph, only a cautious loosening in his chest. The work afterward was harder than the apology. Ethan helped build the new unit from an empty office that used to store outdated monitors. He hired 2 safety coordinators, restored the frozen maintenance positions, and reviewed every high-risk vendor contract. Anonymous reports began arriving within the first week. One night, cleaner reported water pooling near an electrical closet. A junior technician admitted he had been told to sign a checklist for equipment he had not inspected. A security supervisor flagged a loading dock door that had failed twice, but been marked acceptable because repair would disrupt a tenant move-in. Each report forced action, and each action irritated someone with a budget, a deadline, or an excuse. Vivian kept her word more often than Ethan expected, though not without friction. 3 months in, a senior property director complained that Ethan's unit was slowing tenant improvements. Vivian asked whether the delay was based on documented safety risk. When the director said yes, she replied, "Then it is not a delay. It is the cost of doing the work correctly." Ethan heard about the exchange from Diane and allowed himself a small private smile. He and Vivian still disagreed sharply. She wanted quarterly summaries shorter. He insisted that short summaries often hid long problems. She proposed a software dashboard to rank risks. He told her a dashboard was useless if the worker with the warning still feared his manager. Once, after reviewing a new executive policy, Ethan sent her a 3-line email. This was written by someone who has never carried a toolbox through a flooded stairwell at 2 in the morning. Rewrite it with input from the people who will live under it. Vivian stared at the email for 10 minutes, furious. Then she forwarded it to the policy team with one sentence: "He is right." At home, life did not become magically easy. Molly still needed braces. Ethan still budgeted carefully. The truck transmission finally had to be replaced with money he would rather have saved, but the apartment stayed theirs. The Science Fair lighthouse won second place, and Molly taped the ribbon beside Claire's old photograph on the refrigerator. One evening, while Ethan washed dishes, Molly asked if the woman from his work was still mean. Ethan dried a plate slowly. "She was wrong," he said, "and she's trying to do better." Molly considered that. "Do you forgive her?" Ethan looked toward the cardboard box, now folded beside the closet. "I don't know if forgiveness is one big thing," he said. "Maybe it's a lot of smaller things people have to earn." A year after the meeting, Vivian visited the operations floor without an escort. The department no longer froze when she appeared. People still straightened, but they did not hide papers or stop talking mid-sentence. That change mattered to her more than she expected. Ethan was at his desk reviewing a report with Diane. Beside his computer sat Molly's photo and the crooked clay turtle. Vivian paused at the desk. "You kept it," she said. Ethan followed her gaze. "Molly says turtles are stubborn enough to survive anything. She may be right." Vivian hesitated. "Do you still have the box?" Ethan leaned back. "Yes. It's in my garage now. Extension cords. Christmas lights, old screws. Very executive use." Vivian smiled, then looked toward the training room where she had apologized. "When you started folding it, I was certain you were bluffing." Ethan's smile faded into something gentler. "So was I." Vivian did not answer. That truth moved through her more deeply than accusation would have. She had spent years believing courage looked like certainty, like command, like never letting a room see doubt. Ethan had shown her something far less comfortable. Courage could be a frightened father driving home with no job, wondering if dignity had just endangered his child. Accountability could be a powerful woman reading the same folder twice and finally seeing what she refused to see the first time. Neither of them framed the moment. Neither turned it into a speech. But after Vivian walked away, Ethan opened a drawer, took out a fresh inspection report, and began marking the first page. The building still had problems. People still made mistakes. Systems still needed watching. Real change did not arrive like thunder. It arrived like maintenance, daily, unglamorous, necessary, and easily ignored until something broke. Ethan understood that better than anyone. So did Vivian now. And somewhere between the empty box, the written promises, and the work that followed, Blackwood Harbor Group became a little less willing to confuse someone's need with permission to take their dignity.